Good afternoon, and welcome back to Virtual Vets 20. Hope you all had a wonderful Labor Day weekend. Today is part 10 of our 16-part webinar series, hosted by the National Veteran Small Business Coalition. I'm Earl Morgan, the NVSBC Program Director, and to all our new attendees today, thank you for joining us. Again, thank you to our 8 sponsors who made this webinar series possible. The runtime for this webinar is 1 hour, and during the webinar, if you have any questions, please type in the text box on the screen. We will try to get to all the questions on this webinar, and if by chance we missed your question or do not have time to answer it, we'll get it back to you and post it on the Virtual Vets 20 replay webpage. And just a reminder, all previous webinars and slide presentations are located on a link on your screen. And now let me introduce our Executive Director for the National Veteran Small Business Coalition, Mr. Scott Jensen. Scott, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Earl, and good afternoon to some of you, and good morning to others of you. It's great to be here with you again this week, and thanks again for your continued support. We hope that you're seeing the merit and value of these webinars as much as we are. Today, again, we have some wonderful presenters who have some great information to pass along. I'd like to introduce Sue Malone. Sue is a small business advocate for all 50 states and the founder of Strategies for Small Business. Her sole mission for the last 5 years has been to help people obtain access to capital to start or expand their businesses. Sue has helped fund over 41,000 SBA loans, which include Patriot Express loans, Export Express, Community Express, private loans, and Small Lender Advantage V2, and she's become the largest SBA lender by volume. Her goal is to fund 100,000 small businesses. Sue travels the nation meeting, promoting, and funding small business owners, especially minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses. She's fueled by her passion to help small business owners pursue their dreams. Sue has received numerous awards for her contributions to the success of small business around the nation. She's been the number 1 lender to minority-owned business by volume under SBA. In addition, she's involved with private equity and investment funding. Sue continues to develop new financial and funding programs, since in her terms, not every business owner wears the same size shoe. Joining Sue today is Grant Bennett. Grant is the director of the Veterans Program at Peoplefund. He joined the Peoplefund team in October of 2014. Grant manages the PeopleVet and the Veteran LLC programs with a focus on access to affordable capital for veteran entrepreneurs and their families. Grant is a U.S. Army and Texas Army National Guard veteran. He holds a BBA in management from St. Edward's University and an MS in technology commercialization from the University of Texas at Austin. Sue and Grant, we are honored to have you here today. We've been looking forward to this discussion. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules, and thank you both for your continued commitment to business owners, veteran business owners, and those who really need help. You guys you do so much work for all of us, so it's our pleasure to have you today. With that, I'll turn it over to you all, and we look forward to the discussion.
Super. Thank you, Scott. And Grant, it's always great to be working side by side with you. We pass all the time across country, and we work together with vets for a number of years, and it's always fun to be here with you. One of the things that Grant and I, when we were discussing putting this all together, we want this to be interactive. We want you to be able to ask your questions, and we want you to be able to get real, live, honest answers that you can take back out into the world, because we all know we're in a very strange environment right now, coming through the pandemic and all of the programs that were rushed out immediately. But every business, whether you're starting a business or expanding your business, needs capital. So we're excited to get started, and Earl is in charge of our slides. Next slide, Earl. Well, you know who our speakers are. I'm Sue, and now it's Grant's turn.
Hello, Grant Bennett with Peoplefund. And yeah, just want to echo, absolutely great to be here and great to talk with everyone. So with that, I think we're going to go next slide.
These are some of the statistics for small business and that we wanted to share because this is how important all of you are. 23 million small businesses in the United States. You count for 60% of the jobs, 97% of the exports. That's huge right now because we have a horrific trade imbalance going on. I know I'm working with a group of veterans that are farmers in the Midwest right now trying to get soybeans. I never knew I'd know so much about soybeans, that's for sure. Down the Mississippi on barges out to China and India because we just can't get enough soybeans to them. And then you come up with the most patents. And look at how many majority-owned veteran businesses there are in the United States, 2.52 million. That's huge. That's how important all of you veteran-owned businesses are. Next slide. Grant, I'll let you do this one.
Sure. So stats on veteran-owned business, 9.1% of all small businesses in America are owned by veterans. And that is a huge deal for me personally, but then just to the overall U.S. economy. To me, the way I think about this is veterans are the backbone of small business in America, and it's been that way for a long time. One of the things that I do want to highlight for everyone on the call that has an interest in entrepreneurship and that is a veteran, to me, the way I think about this is this is your continuation of service to our country. Small business ownership is a huge part of the American dream, but also for veterans, it's also what we see a lot of times is it's a way for them to continue to give back to the country, but it's also a way for them to continue to give back to the local communities. We see that through hiring other veterans, just profit sharing or investments in local nonprofits or veteran service organizations, things like that. Whenever a veteran starts a business, typically they're giving back to their community just by operating a small business, but they're also actively participating in their local and national communities, which my hat's off to all of you for that. These are kind of the breakdowns of where we see a lot of veteran-owned businesses. Finance and insurance is the biggest one. It's been that way for a while, but transportation and warehousing is another big one, and obviously construction, agriculture, utilities, professional and technical services as well. When I look at this, the way I think about it is it's a lot of operating businesses. Finance and insurance is a huge service that veterans are very interested in, but transportation, warehousing, construction, fishing, agriculture, that's a lot of work. I mean, that's doing actual work out in the economy and in the community, and it's a big deal. So we like to see veterans that are out there participating in these industries. Total annual revenue is $1.14 trillion. Over 5 million employees. A lot of those, veteran entrepreneurs like to hire veterans. So that's a way, that's a very good positive feedback loop that we see. 85% founded their own business, and owners who purchase their businesses is about 10% of that. So, what we're going to be talking about in this is just how you as an entrepreneur can either start or grow your small business, and how you can get access to the capital that you need to be able to do that. Capital can sometimes get a bad rap for some folks, especially in the beginning, but I think if you can come at it from a strategy beforehand, put yourself in order, understand what your financial request is going to be, what you're going to need the capital for, and who you should be talking to get access to that capital. And you'll be able to use it responsibly in a way that'll help your small business and help you as a veteran entrepreneur. Slide.
And Grant, why don't you talk about what Peoplefund has to offer and what you do within Peoplefund and what you've been able to build?
Perfect, thank you. So Peoplefund is actually a nonprofit. We're considered a community lender, and our focus is on we only lend to small businesses and we only lend to operating small businesses. This is the only product we have is just a traditional small business loan. And like I mentioned, it's to people that want to either start or grow their small business that banks typically skip over. And so what that looks like is going to be businesses or owners that live in low to moderate income areas. It's going to be minorities. A lot of times we consider women to be part of that group. And then also what makes Peoplefund unique is that we include veterans in that group as well. We think that veterans have an outsized problem getting access to capital to start or grow their small business. And unfortunately, what we also see is that there are some alternative lenders out there who specifically target veteran entrepreneurs, but then have astronomical, unaffordable interest rates that really extract a lot of the cash flow and extract a lot of the value from the small business that makes it much harder to grow or even get things started over time. So what we've done at Peoplefund specifically, which was in the state of Texas, is we started a loan program just for veterans that has a discounted interest rate when compared to our other products. And then we also, a key part of it for us is education. And so we have pre-loan education that kind of helps the veteran entrepreneur understand how to put their business plan together, how to put their financials together. We like to bring people in from the community, other veterans in from the community, so that they can start to build that professional network and understand, okay, if I have a legal issue, I can reach out to this lawyer who's also a veteran and has a focus on small business. We do the same with accountants and all the other professionals that folks need access to start their small business. And then the other part of that is after the loan, we have post-loan programs as well. And a lot of that has to do with mentoring, one-on-one mentoring. We do a lot of business coaching at Peoplefund as well. We have a lot of resources that we have available to ensure the success of the small business. So it's not just about the capital. A lot of it's about the education piece. A lot of it's about mentoring and networking as well. And bringing all of those things together builds an ecosystem of veteran entrepreneurship that helps ensure success both at the local community, but then as you kind of expand outwards. And so we had a lot of success with that program within the state of Texas, and so we wanted to find a way to scale it nationally. And so that's what I've been working on the past couple of years. We've put together a coalition of a total of 13 CDFIs right now, a total of 13 community lenders right now across the country. We're in about 20 states. We're continuously building out new community lenders so that we can spread our geographic coverage. And the idea there is we want to scale our ecosystem nationally. So we're partnering up with a number of veteran service organizations, foundations, banks, and a number of other partners to create this ecosystem, but more importantly, to create a loan fund so that veteran entrepreneurs, the country over, have access to affordable capital. The watchword there for us is affordable. Any of the community lenders that sign in to be part of the Veteran LLC Collaborative adhere to or promise to lend to veteran entrepreneurs at a single-digit interest rate. And so, depending on where you're at in your small business, you might think, oh, that's super high, or maybe you think, oh, that's a really good deal. But just to put it into perspective a little bit, a single-digit interest rate over time historically has been really hard. If you look back in the 70s and the 80s, people would have clawed to get a single-digit interest rate when you see, the prime rate that goes up to 15-20% in some cases. Right now it's been at, after the recession in 2008, 9, 10, interest rates have been really low over time. But that doesn't mean they're always going to be low. So what we're trying to do now is we're trying to build enough capital that's self-sustaining so that over time, regardless of the economic situation, veteran entrepreneurs are able to have access to capital at an affordable rate that's going to be able to help them, again, start or grow their small business. So that's what we're in the works with now. Sue?
And thank you, Grant. And what's so wonderful is that Grant really follows through on all of this. So I've been working with him for a number of years, and I've seen how it just keeps evolving. and spreading, and all for the right reasons. I want to hone in on a couple things. Is what Grant said with the high interest rates. Please be careful of these predatory lenders. I just stopped a group that was going after veterans in the Atlanta Southeast area, and they were charging unbelievable amount of interest rates for veterans. Money is a commodity. Its base is a risk, but please be careful. Some of these interest rates, I call it like crack cocaine. They bring you into it. They say it's only going to be 15%. You think, oh, 15% is not bad. Next thing they know, because they're taking them out of your account every single day, that they see that your accounts are overdrawn, so they give you a little bit more. And by the time you're done, you're at 50%. I've seen one at 131%. The only time you have a net profit of that is when it's running guns, women, or drugs, because there's nowhere else that you're going to get that kind of a net profit. So please be careful. I just was working with a group of veterans, great business, great transportation business, and got caught up in that cycle because it's quick and it's fast and it fits their needs right away. But getting out of them is very, very difficult because they have some of the top attorneys in the world. So breaking those covenants is very difficult. I haven't had one person that's been successful. The only way they get out of it is if they file bankruptcy. So please, please, please be careful on all of that. With regards to lending, as Scott was telling you in my bio, I do a lot of SBA lending, wrote a lot of SBA programs on it. But when the market changed, it was tough to get capital out to small businesses. So on top of all of this, what I did is I'm here in Silicon Valley, that I reached out to groups of people that I had worked with and had grown up with in the business world. And so we pooled our money together. So small businesses would always have access to capital because sometimes not everyone is bankable. Other times it's too difficult to meet all the requirements in a bank, because remember, banks have to follow a lot of rules because they've got your deposit money on hold in their hands, so they're loaning that out. So they have to be good stewards of the funds, and startups are always a little bit difficult on getting the capital. That doesn't mean it can't be done. So there's many different ways of accessing capital. Not only is the debt side, but when you go out and you look for the debt, I want you to make sure you can afford it. Especially if you're a startup, I want you to be able to put together your cash projections and look to see that there's a cash flow there so you can pay the loan back. That's going to be key for all of this. So all the different lending programs that I've developed, that's the main goal of all of them, because I'm not in the grant business. I'm in building businesses, and one way that I have found that's been successful with building businesses is as people having responsibility to pay it all back. If you don't have any skin in the game, or if you don't have any of your own self in it, you don't take it as seriously. So, and I also have an equity piece, but when we get farther down on this presentation, I'll go more into the equity. So I have debt with the SBA programs. Then I have debt from a debt pool that we have put together. And then we also have the equity position. And then I also want to talk, and Grant and I are going to tag team on this, on the CARES Act and COVID-19 that came out, because it came out so quickly. I was part of it when it was coming out, working on it with the Senate Small Business Committee, and it came out very quickly. The next thing we knew, there was an announcement that it was going to come out, and people were lined up at their banks that day to get the capital, and the rules weren't even out yet. So it was a very interesting phase for all of us, and it kind of came out in 3 different strides. But the other thing I want to talk about is, and I'm going to let Grant talk in a minute, on the EIDL, because that USDA disaster is still up and operating, and there's still capital there. Now, the advance piece, which was originally called a grant, now it's called an advance, that is out of capital. But the EIDL part of it is still, there's capital still available in that. Now, I get calls all the time to see if the PPP is going to come back up, because there's still $23 billion still left in that fund that has not been allocated out. So that's what we've been kind of working on the Senate and the House side with that money. Grant, do you want to add anything on the PPP and the EIDL or the COVID?
Yeah, I think the way that I thought about the CARES Act was, if we look back at the response to the economic downturn in kind of the 08-09 period, a lot of the things that came out of that were for Wall Street. The programs that came out of that was to basically save and build back up Wall Street. The CARES Act, to me, is the same playbook, but they've just pivoted it towards Main Street. And so I think the programs that have been out, they came out rather quickly. The difference between EIDL and PPP is it can be subtle. With EIDL, you are the money, the funds are coming directly from the Small Business Administration. The SBA will only lend money in times of emergency, and that's what the EIDL program is. And then the PPP program is actually, you're getting, it's a program set up by the SBA, but the banks are actually the ones that are underwriting, approving, and funding those loans that will then, they will then kind of sell them off back to the SBA over time, or they're guaranteed to the SBA or by the SBA, excuse me. And so those programs are a little bit different. With the EIDL program, I know that they were tweaking it over time. I don't think they were fully prepared for the demand that they were going to see. I know it seems like they changed the requirements for the advance seemingly overnight, which I think was frustrating for some people. But also, if that money is still available and you still have a chance to get access to that money, I think it's a really good source of capital that, as it's listed here, once in 100 years. Money like that will not be around. We hope that money like that will not be around that often, because when it is around, things are have the chance to go off the rails, and that's why this type of program has been set up to help safeguard against that. So with that, as a business owner and an opportunist, if you have an ability to get access to that capital and you need it, I would highly encourage it. With the PPP program, what's interesting is we're kind of in I think we're still in a holding pattern on it. It might go away, or it might come back. It ran out before, and there was a law, and then they got more funds for it, and it started back up. So we might see that happen again. I will say this: if you have a PPP loan that you've already received, you should be coming up on your on the forgiveness portion for that. Now, if you've got it from, if you got your funds from a bank, they should be actively working on what the rules are going to be, what the forgiveness process is going to look like for you. But if they're not, you need to be talking with them. You need to be reaching out to whoever your point of contact is with the funder, so that you are kind of keeping on them that, hey, the forgivable portion of it is coming due. We need to get started on it. So make sure that on your end, don't just leave it to the bankers. From their angle, they're working with thousands and thousands of borrowers right now. And so sometimes stuff like that can slip through the cracks. You really need to be proactive for that portion. Even in a document, it says that asking for forgiveness is going to be on the borrower. So be proactive on that. Now, if PPP comes back and you have the ability to apply for it, the way that I've thought about it is there is a forgivable portion of it that basically funds the payroll for I think 10 weeks or something like that, for employee payroll for 10 weeks. And then
up
you
to
can
24 weeks.
Yeah, and then so you can apply for additional funds if you need it for like operating capital, whether it's rent, some of the other things. If the PPP program comes back and you're able to get access to it, I would highly encourage you to try and work with either your bank that you have a relationship with, a local community development financial institution or CDFI, or someone that is offering that program that will take your application. And I would really focus in on the forgivable piece. because again, that's money that you get that's then forgiven. But if you need more money than that, again, that type of capital does not come around every day. It is, you know, it really is once in a lifetime. We rarely see these types of opportunities. So again, I would encourage you to take advantage of that if needed. I think, you know, those are kind of my thoughts on it. There's the CARL, the Community Advantage Relief Loan Program, that's also put out through the SBA, that's active right now. So if you're in a place, it's actually very different than EIDL and the PPP process. But if you are needing access to capital, that's another program that's out there, the SBA CARL Loan Program, CARL. So that's another resource out there that the SBA is put out, and is kind of their response post PPP loan program. So that's, I think, all I've got for CARES. Sue, I know that you might have some thoughts about what may be coming down the pike, but I don't know if you want to cover that or not.
I can't say it totally because I don't want to give anyone any false hopes and then not pass. So
sorry, I
didn't have to be
tease
careful
you up
on
wrong
that.
there.
But the other thing I want to say is you could have both the PPP and the EIDL loan. So as a grant to the PPP, for the forgiveness covers a certain portion. And remember, that's a 1% interest payback for what's not forgiven. And then EIDL you can use for other things, and that's at a 3.75% interest rate. So the interest rates are unbelievable. So
Yes.
You need to take advantage of it, because it will sustain your business through these tough times. If your lender hasn't reached out to you regarding the forgiveness part of PPP, a lot of those rules are still being written, and that's the reason why too. But as Grant said, reach back out to who you received the loan from and find out, do I need to do anything? Where are we on this, so you can get the forgiven part, because that's free money to you.
Agreed.
Next slide. Okay, requirements for funding. Grant, why don't you start with what your requirements are?
Sure. So the way that we think about things, again, we have a number of products, but they all function the same way. And the idea is that it's an installment term loan, typically between 5 years up to 7 years. We can go past that on some circumstances, but that's the majority of the loans that we're doing are between 5 to 7 years. And so we think of those in terms of either a startup business or an established business. And so for us, a startup business is someone that has been operating for 2 years or less, including pre-revenue companies. So we are able to do startup loans, but we just require a couple of different things compared to an established business. And so for startups, Sue talked about it at the top, we require a 15% equity injection. And so whatever the loan size is going to be, we require 15% of that to be in liquid, in cash, from the owner, that goes towards the business. It doesn't go towards the lender. The lender isn't taking that cash. It's just we as the lender want to see you, the borrower, the owner of the business, putting capital into the business along with us, so that we're partners in it. And so, you know, if you think about it from that angle, if you're trying to start a small business, you're only required to put 15% of your capital in it, and the bank will cover the other 85%. With startup businesses, we also require business plans and 3 years of financial projections. I think for a couple of reasons, the idea of a business plan has kind of fallen out of favor for a lot of folks. But you know, as a former underwriter, I can assure you that your business plan does not go unread. I read every single line of it. I'm analyzing it. I'm making sure that everything's making sense, and that you've thought through your business. And that's a big part of it, is just putting your thoughts for the plan of starting your business or growing your small business, putting it on paper, so that you can get buy-in from other folks outside of your business. I think business plans are extremely important. I think financials are extremely important as you're trying to plan moving forward for your business. And then another big one that we look at for startup businesses is that we want to see some sort of outside source of income other than the business. We'll obviously underwrite and see what you think the business is going to do, but again, those are projections. And so from us as a lender, we specifically want to see that there are other sources of cash flow that are coming in that are going to be available for you to repay the debt if the business doesn't perform to the projections that you put forward. So that's another big one for us. Now, outside of that, personal credit's a big one that we look at. But as a community lender, we don't have minimal credit scores. We're not looking, we're doing like a line by line analysis of, what you have going on in your credit to have a better understanding. We understand and we know that things happen, especially now in the environment that we're looking at. Sometimes business owners have to, make really hard choices about, whether I pay this bill or I pay that bill because I just don't have the cash available. So we know that things like that happen. So historically, we've taken things like that into consideration, things like collections and some of the other things or slow pays that we've seen. And we're able to overcome that, where I think with a traditional bank, if you don't have a certain credit score, they're not even going to look at it. And then if you do have a certain credit score, but you've had any minor issue, they're usually going to automatically say no on the credit piece. We're much more flexible on that, and we're much more able to understand the backstory and kind of move forward with the credit piece. I will say that as we've come out of the COVID-19, a lot of the credit that we've been looking at, we're not even looking at 2020. In some instances, we're only looking at Q1 of 2020. We understand that folks are having a tough time because, this is affecting not only the American economy, but the global economy. And so one of the things that we've done is a lot of the programs that we've had in response to COVID-19 is we're still looking at credit, but we're not necessarily looking at anything that's happened in 2020 because we know that people have just had to make really tough choices, and this thing has really caught a lot of people off guard. For existing businesses, we don't require, and again, existing business is something that's been in operation for 2 years or longer for us. We don't require business plan or projections. We don't require an equity injection. We do still look at personal credit on that. But the other big thing that we look for are personal tax returns, but also business tax returns for the business since it's for the last 3 years, or since it's been in operation if it's shorter than 3 years. And the big thing that we're looking for there is that historically the business has operated at a level that can sustain the debt that it's asking to take out. So it doesn't necessarily have to, if 3 years ago your business doesn't have to be operating at a level that will carry the debt, but we do want to see some sustainable growth within the business. And the one thing that I always like to point out here is a lot of times business owners will structure their business tax returns in a way to pay the least amount of taxes possible, which is fine. I understand that approach. But the other side of that is if you're not showing any profit on your business tax return, it's going to be hard for the underwriter who's analyzing that deal to show any cash flow in their analysis. Because if your tax return is not showing anything, that's what we're basing everything off of, is what you're telling the federal government. So if you're showing the federal government that you didn't have any net income for the past 3 years because you've structured things in a way to save yourself a tax bill, then the underwriter isn't going to be able to use any of that cash flow. So, things like interest and depreciation and things like that, we can add back. But typically it's not enough to be able to support some of that cash flow. So I would say this, that, obviously you want to keep your tax bill as minimum as possible, as any business would. You want to pay more than you owe. But then also, if you're going to need financing in the next year, couple of years, something like that, plan now to show some cash flow from the business so that when you go to apply for a loan, it can see that you're generating income. So that's a big one for us when we look at existing businesses. Purchase of another business and the equity financing. I think I'll leave the majority of this to Sue, but just to give my thoughts, the purchase of business is definitely something that we're able to do. It's a lot of the time we use the SBA, a lot of the SBA programs as well, and so some of those programs allow us to use for the purchase of a business. From our perspective, if you are purchasing a business, we still consider that to be a startup, even though it's a functioning business that's being purchased. It's still new management, it's still new ownership, and for us, we look at it as a new business that's being acquired. And so the startup business requirements for us are there for the purchase of an existing business. And then equity financing. I think the one thing I want to say here is just that with equity financing, understand that when an equity partner comes on board, they're going to want it to eventually see a return on their money. It might not be for 5 years, it might not be for 10 years or whatever, but they're going to want to get their money back. So it's not just them giving you money and then they're just having a stake in your company. They're going to want a return at some point, right? And so when you compare that to a bank is just getting their money back every month, and then once it rolls off, they're good to go. That's not the case with an equity financing. Once they buy in, they're there forever until someone else buys them out or something. There's another liquidity event. So understand that you're bringing on, make sure that you're bringing on a partner, then also understand that they're going to want to get their money back eventually. And the other side of equity financing or equity partners is the idea that you want to be bringing people on that already have a network, that already have experience in the industry of the business that you're doing, so that if there's some issue, if there's a problem, or you as an entrepreneur are facing something that you just don't have experience with, you can tap into those equity partners, those other business owners, the partners in your business, and you can say, hey, this is the issue I'm having. And they should have a very wide network that they allow you to tap into to figure out how to solve those problems. So with equity partners, there's a lot of really big upside with them that I think people don't necessarily think of. They just think about the money. Think beyond that. Think of the network that they're bringing, the experience that they're bringing into your business, so that they can help you grow moving forward. So is there anything else you want to touch on with those?
Yes. A couple things that I do want to talk on regarding the startup options on it, especially in today's market. And if you're an existing business and also want capital, one of the things that you're going to have to start thinking about, and also the lender is going to want to see, is does the business have a positive cash flow during COVID? I know Grant talked about that they weren't looking at the credit, but it's interesting is that they are looking to see what the business did during the pandemic. Were they able to adapt their business? Were they able to keep their employees? If you received the PPP, you have to so note that. If you received the EIDL, you're also going to have to so note that you received those funds. And how did the business adapt during this COVID? Summary of what the business was like prior to the shutdown in February, March. Really March, but February 15th is what they kind of look at as the starting point. However, it shut down towards the end of March. Are you able to reopen? This is really looking at some of the cities and states, such as our state, that hasn't really reopened. And if you are able to open up a little bit, what have you done to put in your safeguards? What's your social distancing? How are you keeping it clean? Subject to occupancy restrictions, what are you doing to take care of that and still having enough revenue come in to sustain your business? And how do you anticipate the cash flow going for the rest of the year? Let's say you can only have a quarter of the clients into your business. How are you able to adapt, and will you be able to add on, including more clients and being able to add on to your payroll? And describe how quickly it took for you to, I know everyone was shut down right away, but describe how quickly you were able to adapt and bring your business back online. One of the things you are going to be able to show no matter what is the debt coverage. Can you service the new loan that you're requesting? Okay. And then the other thing I want you to be apprised of is some of the industries now have been ranked by what lenders are going to look at towards lending. Some of the ones that are ranked very high with a very low risk are wholesale, manufacturing and wholesale, professional industries, medical and dental, medical supply, owner-occupied businesses, veterinarians, accountants, insurance agents, and architects. Those are considered less risky. Some of the restricted ones now that lenders really have to take a double look at are breweries, liquor stores, contractors, environmentally sensitive businesses such as dry cleaners and print operation, employment agencies. Employment agencies were hit very, very, very hard during the downturn. Of course, concert and movie theaters, although I was talking to a gentleman earlier today, and they had an outdoor concert where everyone was spaced apart, and they sold quite a few tickets and had a wait list of how many people wanted to come back out and hear live music. Of course, hair salons and nail salons are another one that's been restricted, and there'll be exceptions made to it, but you've got to have a very, very good reason and show that you've got the cash flow to be able to do it. The other thing that I'm seeing a lot of is purchase of existing businesses. A lot of people are coming out of this pandemic and they want to sell their business, especially in the dental market. It's unbelievable how many dental practices are for sale right now. But a lot of the people that were in their late 50s, early 60s after the shutdown are looking to see, do I want to go back into business? Do I want to go through another downturn? Do I want to go through all of this again? Or would I rather sell my business and retire? So seeing lots and lots of businesses that are for sale. So it's a good time to come in and buy a business. And as Grant said, they're going to be looking at the tax returns from the prior business, and they're also going to be looking at you putting together a COVID plan, how you plan on taking this business to the next level and what you're going to bring to the business. Also, they're going to look at your skill set. Your resume is hugely important because you've got to have the skill set for the business that you are purchasing. Regarding the equity, since I do a lot of equity financing, what we're looking at, we're seeing quite a few pitches that are coming in on it, but it's very interesting is what we're mainly focusing on right now is transition to the new economy. We are in a new economy. Just take one, for instance, is telemedicine. Telemedicine has taken over medicine right now. I was talking to a cardiologist the other day, and he's doing all of his checkups through telemedicine. And I went in to see how he was doing it because he's come up with a new medical device he wanted us to invest in. So we went to look at the new device, and he can measure a heartbeat through telemedicine. Who would have ever thought 5 years ago or 3 years ago or even 12 months ago that this is what was going to be developed? So people are coming up with some great new ideas and they're adapting. So also education is another key that they're looking at on all of that to see what is going on there and what's being adapted to meet that requirement. So look at those things. And then one of the things on the equity investment that Grant was talking about was that is the investor going to make money? Remember, when you pitch, it's got to be 15 slides, 15 minutes and a half hour worth of questions. And you hope that the investor does not walk out after slide 2. Because your first pitch, when you go in and do your first pitch, what your goal is to get a second meeting. Because when you get a second meeting, that is when you go back into the depths of it all. So you want to go in for the second, be able to get in the second meeting with your financials. Your first meeting is to spark the interest. And what you're going to be trying to get across of them is why to invest with you. Talk about how your background, how you are loyal, and how you have been through things besides just business, okay? Talk about what you also do outside of business. So they see it's a well-rounded individual. Second of all, talk about your share of the marketplace. Where you are in that share of the marketplace, how you're going to be able to capture more. Also, do your due diligence of who you're pitching this to. Look to see if they have a background in this industry, to see if they've invested in this type of industry. Look to see what else that they have in their portfolio that your business might be a complement. Working on a project right now. One of the ones that we're going to syndicate the investment with lacks in this area that this business is involved in. So this would be a perfect fit for them. So we put in half the equity and they're putting in the other half of the equity. So look at it that way. Also, when you're putting your 15 slides for 15 minutes, make sure you've got one slide on who are the founders of the business and how they came about to founding this company, because you want to see that they have a vested interest too, and they're in here for the long run. We're in very different times. Look also, I know no one has a crystal ball, but put a strategic plan together of where you see this business going in 3 to 5 years. Don't just limit yourself, and don't say you're going to take 99% of the marketplace and it's a $2 billion industry, because no one's going to believe you. They know you hadn't done your homework on all of this. So look at those things, know who you're talking to, and your goal is with the first meeting is to get that second meeting. I cannot stress that enough, because most people think when you get the first meeting, they're going to write you a check. No, that's not the case. They're not going to write you a check. They're going to see what else you have behind you. And Grant is so right when he said the equity investors bring so much more than just the money. They bring their network. They also bring scalability to the business, because you're going to want scalability in order for this business to grow. Also, make sure, as Grant said, you like who's going to be your equity investor. They're part of your team now. You make sure you can sit on a board with them. Nothing is worse than having an equity investor that you're fighting with at the very beginning, because he who has the money wins. So make sure that you also get some of that money in the long run of all of this. Are we going to do questions now, Scott, or do you want to wait?
Well, I have one question that's come in and a couple others, but so let me just to make sure that we do answer these, get a couple out there, and then we can see where the conversation goes. We've had one listener with this question. I've taken out a PPP and an EIDL loan package. I was provided a higher loan ceiling in my EIDL and chose not to take it all down. Can I go back to them and reapply for the balance of the loan I didn't subscribe to originally?
That's a heater that I'm going to leave for Sue.
Are you going back in and asking for a higher EIDL? Is that what you're asking for?
Yeah, they got applied for a certain amount. They took less and drew down on their idle balance, but now they're wanting to see if they can go back and draw down the remaining balance that they were approved for.
There's 11 million loans in the queue right now.
Yeah.
You can give it a shot, but I wouldn't. You can always try. There's no harm in trying.
Yeah.
But don't want. I hope you don't want it in a hurry.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that, again, it doesn't hurt to try. The program's still out there. You should have some type of point of contact in there with the SBA that's kind of facilitating the loan for you. Reach out to them and see if they're sympathetic for what you're trying to do. Again, it doesn't hurt to ask. Just try. It doesn't mean that it'll happen, but if it's open, there's a chance. And if there's a chance, you might as well take it. There's a high upside and there's no downside.
You mentioned predatory practices. Can you highlight a couple of red flags that people should be watching out for, that if they start seeing, they should turn around and walk away?
Big one for me is
the interest rate.
the one that, yeah, for Sue is obviously the interest rate. Like if you're paying higher than what you would be paying on a credit card, just get a credit card, right? If they're coming at you and they're saying, hey, it's going to be 25% or 30% or something like that should be a hard no off the top. But again, like Sue mentioned, like, even if it seems a little high, but it's reasonable. It's getting you the access to capital. But there are other things that they're doing that are going to kind of loop you in. That's going to be an issue. So to me, the thing is the payback period. If they're taking payments every day, that's a percentage of your revenue. That can be a red flag. There are some that do it responsibly, but I would argue that that's a tough way to pay back the loan, and it can get very expensive over time. I would ask a lot of questions from the start. What the interest rate is going to be, what the fees are going to be for overdraft. Is there going to be a prepayment penalty? That's another big one. If someone has an issue with the prepayment penalty, it's probably because they're trying several different ways to make their money back on the interest. And if prepayment penalty is one of the tricks that they have, it's probably a thread that you're going to start to pull, and they've got a number of other tricks up their sleeve for that type of thing. So just understand what the structure of the debt's going to be. One thing that I really think is a good way to sort out all of this is if you work with an SBA lender, a lot of the times you're going to be working with a credible lender, because the SBA, so the way it works is the SBA is there for the small businesses, right? So they structure their loan programs in a way that is beneficial for the small businesses, that still allows the lender the ability to make money on the loans. So any of the predatory practices that they see, they do a really good job of stamping them out, putting them in the policies. Hey, this is a no-go. And so a lot of lenders will adapt all of their practices towards what the SBA requires. And even if they don't, just the fact that the SBA says, hey, they're a certified lender by the SBA, means that they've done their due diligence on that lender, and they're not seeing any kind of these predatory practices. So that's a big one for me. Even if you don't get an SBA loan, working with an SBA lender, I think is a great way to filter out a lot of that bad behavior.
Great. We had someone ask, is there a good source to search for other veteran-owned businesses that might be for sale?
There isn't one whole website, a platform for it. You can, Vets 20, Scott, through your group, a lot of the members, I find out a lot from a lot of your members there that said that they're getting ready to retire. So veteran organizations such as yours are a great source, because they're good, solid businesses, because they're part of your organization. So you know that you can count on them. So a lot of veterans groups, you'll find them, and there isn't just one place. I wish there was, but there is not, that I've seen. What about you, Grant?
Yeah, that's one of the things. It's so funny. This is one of the ideas I've been working with a couple of people about for further down the line is starting a fund exactly for this. I think the idea is that there are a lot of veteran-owned small businesses from kind of the Vietnam veteran era of people that are just looking to retire, right? Like they're getting to the point where they just want to move on with something else. The big thing for them, and Scott, it's so funny we're talking about this, is legacy, right? And so if it's not going to be with the family, if it's not going to be internally, a big one for veterans is they want to sell to other veterans. And so that's an idea that we've been thinking about a lot. And so I think that's something to search for and explore, because you don't just walk down the road. It's not like a house, you see a for sale sign. You got to kind of dig a little bit on the internet, but it's possible. I'm looking up one that I've worked with before. The Veteran Business Project, they have a number of businesses on there that are for sale that focus on selling them to veterans. Some of these are starting to crop up and we're starting to see them more. But if you're looking for them, start looking for them, start trying to just research that, and you'll find them, and you're going to see a lot of them come up, A, because of COVID-19, and then B, a lot of the baby boomer generation, they're finally getting to the point where like they just have to retire. And so a lot of them are going to want to be selling their small businesses and funding their retirement. And so I think that lines up really well for what people are trying to do. It's early stages. There are businesses out there that are for sale. I hate to recommend one, but Transworld, tworld.com, they're just a business broker. There are business brokers out there. They don't necessarily focus on veteran-owned small businesses, but they focus on listing small businesses for sale. And another one, VetFran, which focuses on franchising for veterans. A lot of franchise owners also want to, like, they're going to be facing the same hurdles as far as wanting to retire and want a liquidity event to get themselves there. And so a lot of franchise owners, veteran or otherwise, also like to sell their franchises. And so you can that's another way to tap into it if you have an interest in franchises, is VetFran, or just talking with a business broker that focuses on franchises is a good way to buy one.
Great. Well, it looks like we have time for one more question that just came in. They say we applied for the PPP loan and were awarded $8,000 out of the $36,000 we put in for. We were denied the EIDL loan due to lack of history. Do we have any options? First question. And then the second question or follow-up, should we be denied the EIDL due to lack of history?
Well, depends upon what the lack of history is. I mean, you've got my contact information. Whoever answers the question can give me a call. You can always do a reconsideration on the EIDL loan because there's still time to do that. The PPP is closed. The final close was August 8th. That was the third extension. As I said earlier, I don't know if it's going to reopen or not. But on the EIDL, feel free to give me a call so we can discuss your particulars on it, and you can always go in for a reconsideration.
I would also say just to keep abreast on what's going on in the news and seeing what the further developments are, because this is an issue that I think a lot of small businesses are facing, especially as this thing goes on in time. If the plan initially was to cover people for 10 weeks, and now we're almost 6 months into this thing, like they understand that the issue is dragging out further than they originally planned for it. So I would keep abreast on some of the stuff that's coming out. Another thing is what I mentioned, the SBA CARL program. That's at least another source of capital that's focused on a response to COVID-19 that a business owner should consider, and just explore that program and see if it will be something that you'll want to apply for. It's going to be different than EIDL. It's going to be different from PPP, but it's at least a response to that very problem that I think you're having, is which you were basically underfunded from EIDL and PPP, and then this drags out. So the CARL loan program is a response to that. So between that, reaching out to Sue, reaching out to myself, I think you should be able to formulate some kind of strategy and move forward with it.
Great. What a great way to end that with an offer from Grant and Sue. We put the point of contact information back up for both of them. And as Earl said at the start of our discussion, you also have access to these slides if you go back through the MVSBC site to gain access as well. Sue and Grant, you've generated quite a discussion today. We sure appreciate your time, your attention on this, and just your wisdom that you're passing along. And most importantly, thank you for being willing to talk to our members and those who are on individually and take this up. You're two heroes to the small business world, and the fact that you're supporting so many people, and in our case, particularly those veteran populations and the minority populations that we all represent. Thank you so much for your time. We look forward to the next time. We hope you'll take us up again, because we'll have you back over and over again. And we hope you all have a great rest of the afternoon. Thanks again.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
everyone. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Sue.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Earl.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.